Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Heading into what should be a pretty eventful weekend in the ATL, but what weekend in the ATL isn't eventful? I don't know about you, but I like to follow Georgia followers on Instagram to find out what sort of calamity is going on in the streets of the city of Atlanta. But we've got a president coming in to give a commencement address at Morehouse. And folks, the left, right, center are all hand-wringing, wondering, will there be some sort of protest? We've seen college campus protests throughout the country, and it's been a topic of conversation here on NPR even. I was listening to Alicia Roscoe speaking with the Morehouse president earlier this week. We had President Biden calling into the Big Tigger morning show on V103, a very sanitized, I thought, interview. It sounded very edited down so that we got the hemming and the hawing out, and it was just a tight 11 and a half minutes, if you could call it that. Anyway, joining me to discuss all of this, editor-in-chief of the Atlanta Voice, Donnell Suggs. Donnell, good morning.
Good morning, brother. How you doing?
I'm good. I also saw that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution put together a piece, the headline essentially asking the question, will black men show up to vote for Joe Biden in 2024? The exact headline actually is, hang on, I missed it. Will black men in Georgia vote for Biden or stay home? Ernie Suggs, Greg Bluestein, Jillian Price collaborating on that. And well, I'll do a little bit of skimming through that a little bit later. I've got you on the phone. So I'll ask you, Donnell, are black men going to vote in Georgia for Joe Biden, or are they going to stay home? The question isn't so much of are they going to vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but are they going to vote for Joe Biden or, as the article alludes, choose the couch instead?
I like that the article was written by three people, only one of which is an actual black man.
Right. I noticed that. Ernie's in there. Ernie's in there.
I love Ernie. No relation. That's my brother, but no relation. That's why the Atlanta Voice exists. So you can kind of get it from a black man.
For real.
But anyway, I think the alternative is so much worse that this is a benefit for the Biden-Harris administration. Sorry, but it's really, I think it's going to come down to that. Black men will vote for Biden because the alternative is someone who doesn't seem to have a grasp on how black Americans, period, brown Americans, period, Hispanic Americans even live. So the alternative is so much more worse. I do believe people talk that talk in the barbershop, and they talk that talk, amongst their buddies about, Trump was cool, and Trump had this, that, and the third. But when you get in that booth, I don't think you're pressing that button because it doesn't feel like the guy you're pressing the button for is representative of you. Mind you, Biden's not black either. So let's stop acting like Biden's so black as he gets on radio stations, hip-hop stations, and he comes and does a commencement speech.
Yeah.
But the alternative is so much worse that they will vote for Biden, in my opinion, as a black man.
And there's a case to be made, and I've done so on this show, that this administration doesn't do the marketing, doesn't do the messaging very well. There's a solid case to be made with black voters for the work that's been done. I mean, we could start with Kamala Harris being his running mate, the first black woman to be elected vice president, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the country's first black female Supreme Court justice, student loan forgiveness, the vaccine rollout that was obviously a mess before he got in. The cost of medicine, prescription medicine, insulin is $35 now instead of hundreds of dollars. And I know that diabetes disproportionately affects African Americans more than their white counterparts. There's a lot to be said for the work that he's been done. HBCU funding. I know Donald Trump liked to make a lot of noise about HBCU funding, but the truth of the matter is a lot of that had been laid out before him by President Obama, and he just rubber stamped a continuation of it. And even that's been ramped up since Biden's been sworn in.
Right. The Biden administration is not hiding the fact that they want to make sure they have a strong base in the country of black Americans. I mean, they're not hiding it. And thank you for that. And thank you for the HBCU funding. It should have been happened. But again, it was already in place. So a lot of this stuff was already in place. But that was big. He ramped that up. So I'm glad that the Biden-Harris administration is doing what they're doing. And people are noticing that, regardless of what's popular to say and cool and hip to say. Black voters notice that. And black male voters who are sending their children, i.e. like me, sending our children to colleges, HBCUs especially, We're noticing that too. So I can imagine why this time around, mind you, he defeated him in the last election. So I don't know why we're acting like this can't happen again. That we don't get another dearth of black male voters that are going to vote for Biden.
Do you get a sense, and this article does the barbershop trope where they sit a reporter down in the barbershop and listen to the conversation. And that's, to me, even that's kind of one of those things where it's like, that's not the only place where black folks have conversations. There's other places you could go for conversation. I mean, you could just walk, just a house. You could go to the park on the weekend and talk to folks who are actively.
We drink Starbucks too.
Yes, you
We're
do.
In a coffee shop. We're in a coffee shop. You can go there.
Yeah.
Why is it always a barber shop? But whatever.
Right. No, I mean 1,000%. For me, it's like go and in fact, go to the Starbucks or go to a Dunkin' near the AUC campus,
yes.
or just the one across from the Georgia Tech Hotel. Even there's plenty of African American students, people of color there who are getting their, as you said, their coffee that you could have conversations with. But they did the barbershop stuff. When you're sitting around and because people know what you do for a living, you're editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice, Donnell Suggs joining us. What are they saying to you, or does the conversation even come up?
The conversation is constant. The conversation is constant about local elections as well as national. And we're always having that conversation, and we're always trying to produce content about those conversations. For example, if we can just veer to the right for a moment, that we're electing a new sheriff in Fulton County. I know it's not as sexy as the president, but you're going to deal with the sheriff a whole lot more than you're going to deal with the president of the United States. So in Georgia's largest county, we're electing the top police officer, top law enforcement officer.
Yep.
And I get a lot of people talking to me about that, not asking me who to vote for, but who is this person, who is that? And that's on the front page of our paper today. Constant coverage. So I get constant questions and emails, and sometimes I call them love letters, but they're kind of hate mail about why are you always covering that, or why are you always putting, politics on the front page. And I'm thinking, guys, this is really important, especially this year. It's really important. So we're going to keep on doing that.
So now that you mentioned down ballot stuff, Fani Willis has a primary opponent, and well, let me test the waters here a little bit with your constituency as well. Is there any erosion of support for Fani Willis?
Not in the churches, not amongst women, not
then no.
Then
no.
Exactly. So the voter bases, the big ones, are behind her. The big ones are behind her. I don't blame anyone for challenging anyone. That's the whole point of politics. You should challenge someone. But and strike while the iron is hot, right?
Right.
But no. You're just challenging. You're making me buy ads when I probably didn't need to buy. If this thing didn't happen with this foolishness, with this alleged relationship or whatever, then no one opposes her because no one wants to waste money on advertising and a political campaign. But it did, so someone strikes when it's hot, and I get that. But no. I don't feel any waning in her popularity in the black community, and basically that's who's going to vote for her anyway.
Well, Christian Y. Smith is running against her just in the primary, and again, today's the last day for early voting for those that don't know that, and then we go to the polls of the primary on Tuesday. Christian Y. Smith is running, and he's kind of painting around the corners a little bit, letting folks know that for those that are kind of weary of the situation, the way the Trump trial has gone. And let's call them missteps between she and Nathan Wade in acknowledging their relationship or even having the relationship, and the money that's been spent on that. He's not really being shy about making that a campaign issue. But is it resonating with anybody?
And he'd be a fool not to. You got to take advantage of the situation. I mean, it's gift wrapped for you. Hey, look at me. I'm not that. But I just don't feel it's resonating. I really don't. And granted, someone can say to me, "Hey, you're not covering a ton of Christian Y. Smith." I'm not. I think it's a challenger, and that's always good to have a challenger. But I don't think it's a serious challenge, and there's a big difference between the two.
So that doesn't come up in conversation much. That race. I know you're talking about the Fulton County Sheriff's race and the Fani Willis stuff. Is just like I'm not.
Tight.
I'm going to acknowledge this, Donnell. I haven't voted yet. And the reason, my precinct is literally across the street from my condo building, so it's just so easy.
Nice. Good for you.
But I mean, I've been wrestling with this idea of, do I vote for her primary challenger because I'm weary of the way this trial has been, I think, mishandled. Like, I think her office, and I think she's done a fantastic job putting the case together. Obviously, she got, co-conspirators to take guilty pleas, to take plea deals to aid the case. And then the Nathan Wade stuff came up, and to me, that it's just been fumble after fumble after fumble, and I'm kind of tired of it. I kind of want to see this office getting back to what it was doing before all this went down. And I know we could sit here and say, well, she didn't bring it up. No, but she let it happen.
You let it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely, she definitely fumbled in the fourth quarter.
Right.
If you're letting this happen right before primary.
And look,
not right before a primary, but close to a primary. Yeah. I just don't, I'm being serious. I just don't feel like this guy is a serious challenge. And I would love to be proven wrong, because I love when politics does that. Takes a left turn and just like is, oh my God, we won.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that much support for her prior to, and that much support for her during, and this ongoing support for her after wanes on Tuesday. Will it be a blowout victory? I kind of assume it will be.
Yeah.
But will it be a victory? Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's headline. I think it's headline making if she doesn't get more than 2/3 of the primary vote. I think that's
the story.
That's a warning sign to her, because she's going to have a Republican challenger awaiting her as well in the general election. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is the story. The story is you barely beat this guy, and now Republican challenger is going, okay, we can. I see blood. I see weakness in that.
Right.
A dent in the armor. Yeah.
So with Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice, we saw the New York Times Siena College poll that came out, and we dove into the crosstabs here in Georgia, what the number one issues were facing voters, getting them to the polls. And it had more to do with character and content of the candidates than any one issue. What is the number one issue driving black voters when it comes to deciding who they're going to vote for this election cycle, or that they're even just talking about?
If I can speak for Atlanta and the people we talk to and a lot of people that we engage with, I can say it's character. I don't even think people I don't think the general public, the average mom and dad 9-to-5er, really knows about a lot of how the jobs work. I think for example, the knock on the current sheriff is what happened at the jail. But the sheriff doesn't stab other inmates in the jail.
Right.
But yet you say, hey, that's your jail, and that happened to you. That's a knock on him. Which is fair or unfair?
Yeah.
I think what happened to Fannie Willis is a knock on her, despite her being like any other woman, and that goes with a man, and no one else cares. But hey, look, it happened to you. You're the DA. Knock on them. So I'm hearing the character is the thing. Can we trust you? Can you represent us well? And she does represent them well. So in her case, I don't think this is going to carry over. And Patrick Labat's case, I don't think it's going to damage him very much, but it does allow other people to be able to seriously challenge him. When I thought that going prior to that, all these deaths in jail, I wouldn't have thought anyone would have had a serious challenge. Now I kind of do.
Yeah, Labat's had some questions about money spent, and it's not the hand he's been dealt. I mean, the jail is not his fault. There's a funding problem. It's been long overdue to be addressed, and even now we're seeing some hemming and hawing about. Trust me, a $1.7 billion price tag is something we should hem and haw about, but.
Yeah, you should.
That just shows you how expensive things get when you put them off year after year after year anyway.
And that's the case. Like, the jail is not going to be solved by one man, one woman, a new sheriff, anything. Those problems are old in Atlanta. That jail has been around for quite some time. So, again, but that doesn't matter, because someone's voting with emotions, then they're voting on the fact that 13, 14 young men have died in jail, the jail that you're running. And to me, that makes me sad. I don't want to vote for you. And that's why this is going to be a close election, because it's going to be like, there's 4 people, all very experienced, by the way, all with 25 or more years experience with the department. So these aren't people who don't know the job. And they're all saying, hey, I can do it better. And it's not, and if someone new gets elected, someone in jail still stabs somebody else in jail. Because guess what? We're in jail. And I'm not happy. So he's trying the best to do what he's doing. Other people think they can do better. And the great part about it is we get a chance to vote for who that is.
We're on with editor-in-chief Donnell Suggs of the Atlanta Voice. More of that conversation when the Ron Show returns here on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Thank you for checking out the Ron Show. Donnell Suggs joining us from the Atlanta Voice, the editor-in-chief, and we've got President Biden swooping in this weekend to give a commencement at Morehouse. What do you expect? Do you expect there to be protest or just some individuals shouting back, or what sort of expectation do you have for this?
The beauty of Morehouse, and I even throw Spelman in there for a moment. I'm not a graduate, so I'm not speaking for my college, is that things aren't done the same way at Morehouse that they're done around the city, around the state, around the country. I don't foresee any political stances being made, any protest of any sort at graduation from Morehouse College. Because you know what? This is a defining moment in a young man's life. And I don't foresee a lot of other people stepping in the way of doing that. I'm sorry. I know it's happened all over the country. God bless this country. But I always tell people all the time, there's the United States of America, there's Georgia, which is in that, and then there's Atlanta, and that's a different animal. And Morehouse is another animal within the animal, and it's just not going to happen. Not because they're going to like scare them or the police presence. It's not about that. Well, or the Secret Service that's coming, of course. But I just don't think things move the same way at Morehouse and Spelman as they do, and Clark Atlanta for that matter.
Right.
I just don't think they move the same way in the AUC like they do everywhere else. So we got to stop assuming because some kids walked out of the graduation at Duke or whatever that they're going to do that in the AUC. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different.
And here's the question. We don't see a whole lot of press coverage or media coverage about pro-Palestinian protests on the campus of HBCUs. Is that because they're not happening or they just aren't garnering the attention? Which is it? I
covered one last week. We were there on Morehouse campus. Even a couple of Morehouse professors were there. Very, very calm, very professionally organized. They spoke their hearts. These 3 professors from Morehouse and one Spelman professor. She spoke her mind, and they had a peaceful protest, and they moved on. There are protests on HBCU campuses. They're just not. The violence hasn't come in their direction. I know that most of the protests start out peaceful, and then police presence makes it what it is.
I was just going to say, if you don't have college presidents calling for added police presence, you probably aren't going to have violence. And there's been studies that have borne that out.
Exactly, and that's key because in Morehouse, like I said, I was there last Friday, and people got a chance to speak their minds. They kind of gave them parameters. Press couldn't stand on Morehouse property; we could stand on the corner. Okay, so we weren't making crowds, and the kids were told not to like point their megaphones at the school building or whatever. Okay, cool. Okay. And they all followed the rules, and they had a protest for a couple of hours. People spoke their minds and got the stuff off their chest. There were curse words and whatnot, but it wasn't violence. So maybe the police presence might be a problem. That might be a problem. But no, in AUC, there hasn't been anything that has even anywhere equal to what's happening at Columbia, et cetera.
And that's fascinating. Again, that's fascinating. We pointed out a study that had been done by a nonpartisan organization that showed that 97% of the protests on American college and university campuses actually were peaceful, and that when police were involved, if police did become involved, there was a 50% likelihood that violence did ensue.
There's not a person in this world that you can shove and have them say, please can I have some more. Most people are going to react the way you react to them. That's just human nature. So when you're pushing and shoving and you're screaming and you're, and billy clubs are out or smoke bombs are out or whatever, yeah, okay, people react. So we're not doing that in Atlanta, though. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So with the president swooping in this weekend to give his commencement address at Morehouse, and you mentioned before we went on that Spelman has their commencement this weekend as well, right?
They do. Angela Bassett is the commencement speaker. She's not as politically connected.
She's Angela Bassett, though, man. Oh my gosh, iconic.
So we will be covering that as well as Biden's visit. I get the opportunity to cover Angela Bassett, and I'll let one of my reporters take care of Biden. How about that? I'm going to take it all. I'm going to take it easy this weekend. How about that?
All right, good for you. Well, you do that, man. Do try and take it easy this weekend. Thank you for joining us on The Ron Show. That is Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice. We'll include that link to your coverage of the protest on the AUC campuses in today's show notes at ronshowatl.com. Deal?
Deal. Thank you, brother, as always.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Notable when I was listening to Aisha Roscoe's NPR interview with Morehouse President David Thomas, that she cited Morehouse most famous alum, Martin Luther King Jr., and his calls for nonviolent protest against the war in Vietnam back in the 1960s.
Somehow this madness must cease. We must stop now. I speak as a child of God and brother to the suffering poor of Vietnam.
Aisha Roscoe's first question to President Thomas was,
how are our students, faculty, and even alums reacting to this upcoming speech from Biden? There have already been protests on your campus and requests to disinvite the president. So what are you hearing?
To be exact, we've had 2 protests, neither of which drew more than 100 people. And, my experience has been that we cover the ideological spectrum on this issue. Folks at each end of the continuum, people in the middle, as well as people who can see the value and appropriateness of having President Biden come speak at Morehouse College.
Being that you're hearing from all of these different perspectives, what is your thoughts on this speech that Biden is to give and the invitation? How do you feel about it?
I'm fully in support of the President of the United States coming to speak at Morehouse College. The nation needs somewhere that can visualize for us the ability to hold the tensions that in so many ways are threatening to divide our society, that have divided some of the most venerable campuses in the country. And in a more than philosophical for me way, that's what Morehouse was born for.
Back after this, The Ron Show on America One Radio.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Our thanks to Donnell Suggs at the Atlanta Voice for joining us to start the conversation today. As he alluded to earlier, there were not exactly protests, what do they call them? Speakouts on the Atlanta University Center campuses. Let me give you a taste of his article that he posted May 8th. What was labeled as a student speak out and not a protest took place on the campus of Morehouse College in front of the Walter E. Massey Leadership Center Wednesday morning, earlier this month, obviously. Dozens of students from various universities and colleges within the largest historically black colleges and university installation in the country took a stand against what has been taking place in the Middle East. A number of Atlanta University Center students took turns speaking out against the war in Palestine. There were also a member of Spelman College's faculty who also spoke out against the violence in Gaza. And I'm quoting from the article here, so bear with me. "We tell Biden to f*** off and don't come to the AUC," said one professor that did not give her name. A professor. "We need a ceasefire now. No more lives need to be lost," said Natalie, a Spelman College student who shared that her father was killed by police in January. The AUC and the West End does not support genocide. Chants of "listen to the students are never wrong," "stop Cop City," "hands off Rafah," and "free Palestine" filled the air in between students taking turns speaking out against everything, including United States President Joseph R. Biden coming to Morehouse College to give the commencement speech at graduation later this month. Here's a quote. "We just don't want our tax dollars used for war." That's student media liaison Malik P., a Morehouse rising senior. Period, he said. Along with Morehouse College President David A. Thomas and Spelman College President Helene D. Gale, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens was also targets of chants during the speakout. "No peace on Spelman land, no peace on Morehouse land, no peace on gentrified land," a chant would go. There's some photos with that. We'll share that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Let's pivot over to the AJC article that I mentioned to earlier. Ernie Suggs, Greg Bluestein, Jillian Price collaborating on this piece. Will black men in Georgia vote for Biden or stay home? Let's scroll down a little bit and get to the meat and potatoes here. A spate of recent polls show former President Donald Trump with traction among black voters, including a New York Times Siena poll of Georgia voters recently released that showed about 20% of black respondents are leaning towards Trump in a head-to-head matchup in November. I would point out, however, that the number of actual black men who were asked to participate in this poll, like single digits, wasn't it? Anyway, while political scientists and veteran analysts from both parties urge a cautious approach to those surveys, they underscore a bigger challenge. Put simply, the president's allies don't see it as a question of Biden or Trump among black men who have been among the most loyal Democratic voters. It's more a battle between Biden or the couch. The real question is turnout. That's Emory University political scientist Alan Abramowitz. There's a certain doubts about whether Democrats can mobilize black voters in other parts of the base and whether there's enough enthusiasm for his campaign. Some of them will come home, but others may not vote at all. I'm going to guess Alan Abramowitz is not black. Backed by black voters who resurrected a struggling campaign in South Carolina in 2020, along with helping wrest control of the U.S. Senate with stunning runoff victories in 2021 and 2022. Biden made broad promises to do more than past presidents to improve their situations. We talked about Kamala Harris being the running mate, Ketanji Brown Jackson ascendancy to the Supreme Court. But because of Republican opposition and Democratic infighting, some of Biden's biggest policy promises, like more robust student loan debt relief, criminal justice overhauls, and federal voting rights expansions, stalled or failed. Those, as well as what many see as a lagging economy and stubborn inflation, have drained enthusiasm away from Biden for some black male voters. Biden surprised many political pundits by winning Georgia in 2020 by a slim margin. Nearly 90% of black voters cast their ballots for him. He'll need their support and in large numbers to be reelected. Team Biden has made numerous stops in Georgia in recent months. The president will be back in Atlanta in late June for a debate with Trump. The Reverend James Major Woodall, we've had him on the show, a policy associate with the Atlanta-based Southern Center for Human Rights, said Biden has his work cut out for him. For the folks who are engaged, another speech won't change the fact that when we look at policies, there is not a lot of prior satisfaction on our part, he said. Woodall, by the way, they mentioned, former president of the Georgia NAACP. He continues, President Biden can say whatever at Morehouse, but the reality is our community is still receiving the same level of divestment. The article points to the new Georgia Project, backed by Stacey Abrams, aiming to begin a program in June to engage at least 100,000 black Georgia men to encourage them to vote. Karen Blair, who directs the organization's field operations, said it's clear through his travels across the state that the Biden campaign has struggled to communicate with those voters. We've talked about that, messaging, marketing. The question is, Blair says, what has Biden done? The truth is, a lot has happened, and the stories of the wins have not made their way to the doorstep of voters, particularly black men, Karen Blair said. Tapping black men as surrogates, part of Blair's plan is to register at least 20,000 new black male voters this year, saying, in the conversations we're having, I'm not hearing folks say Trump is the way, adding that he's more worried about the lies that activist groups have largely ignored. We have to show up to the polls with good information to make sure that our folks understand the moment. It is a warning. So let's go to the barbershop where I'm assuming Ernie Suggs, maybe Greg Bluestein, maybe Jillian stepped in. Count Cecil Clark among the Biden supporters who scoff at the hand-wringing over that Democrats' base support. The self-proclaimed super Biden voter jokes that he has been black all his life and has never met a black Trump backer. It is all BS, to be honest with you, he said. Clark, by the way, a retired Marine who lives in Clayton County. Sure, you might have some disgruntled people who don't vote, but I believe that after September, these people are going to come home. Woodall chimes in, said it would be reckless to count the former president out. He still hasn't decided whom to back in November, though he also said he won't vote for the Republican. There are people in the barbershop saying that Trump wasn't that bad compared to what they are experiencing now. Democrats continue to take black voters for granted, so a lot of people don't care that Trump is horrible. They don't care that he is a racist and a criminal. They think life was a little bit better under Trump. So in this barbershop, they speak about it being a slow, rainy Thursday. They went to Off the Hook, an institution in the Castleberry Hill neighborhood near Morehouse. They describe the place, and then they speak with Jabril Clark, who's 25 years of age, and he doesn't think Biden's visit is sincere. I think it's, to pull a vote, he said, just to get the elephant out of the room. He's a white dude at an HBCU full of black men. There's nothing that he can tell us that we don't already know about ourselves. So take what he says with a grain of salt. It shouldn't make you or break you. He also points, Jabril Clark does, to local elections being what will most likely affect him. You heard Donnell Sugg allude to one of them. I brought up the Fonnie Willis race as well. Jabril said, it doesn't make a difference to me either way. Nothing's going to really change when he speaks about the presidential race anyway. Joe King was there as well, age 68, said that it's good to have Biden coming to Morehouse and that it's smart to court black voters, but he said Morehouse should not be his only stop. Boy, this is true. You need to walk downtown Atlanta, walk the streets of the community to see and talk to us. Thurell Lewis, his barber, chimes in. All this about him coming to Morehouse, that's campaigning. But you got to see what the man got to say. If he doesn't say what you like, then you have something to talk about. That's when Joe King, his customer, responds, we're still debating within ourselves when it comes to voting for Biden. Louis the barber, who was dusting the hair away from King's shoulder, said it's still too early for him to decide who would get his vote. The article goes on to mention Biden's visit with the Big Tigger morning show on V103 WVEE. Also to David Thomas, President Morehouse, speaking with Aisha Roscoe on NPR. We covered both of those yesterday, including those in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. I'll do that again so that you can get that in its full scope from the entire conversation today. Scrolling further down the article, Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock said the swirling talk of backlash at Morehouse College seems overblown. Donnell Suggs with the Atlanta Voice said the same thing. He told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution he's mostly heard, quote, a great deal of excitement in conversations with students and alumni. There are a lot of folks that recognize that here's an administration that has invested $7 billion in HBCUs. And this is critically important because for literally 157 years, Warnock says, they have been punching way above their weight. The president understands the importance of these schools. I believe what he's referring to is a story that we talked about. I'm pretty sure this is one that we talked about a year ago. This from NPR back then.
16 states have been underfunding some of their historically black colleges for decades. The shortfall is more than $12 billion, according to an analysis from the U.S. Department of Education. And of all these states, Tennessee underfunded its HBCU land-grant college more than any other state.
That was NPR's Steve Inskeep, and he referred to 16 states. And yes, Georgia was one of those states. Let's pivot back to the AJC article, which, again, as always, we'll include in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Still, the visit to Morehouse by President Biden is politically risky, the three writers opine. The possibility of black students rejecting Biden could reverberate through November. Jason Johnson, a political scientist at the historically black Morgan State University, questions why he picked a politically charged campus. Why is it a politically charged campus? Again, we had the student speak out. Wasn't a protest. Weren't clashes. There were dozens, not hundreds, not even thousands, with a legacy of protest to make his appeal. Jason Johnson saying the imagery of young people, especially young black men, potentially turning their backs, potentially walking out during the middle of graduation, I don't think that's great imagery. Johnson said a better venue could have been someplace like Albany State University, located in a more rural region that was hit hard by COVID-19. Biden, Johnson said, could have easily touted his successes while also stressing his role in addressing the pandemic. In the interview, Warnock shared the story of a recent visitor to Ebenezer Baptist Church, which he has pastored since 2005, who confessed that he fought to defeat Warnock in the 2022 midterm election. Even so, he came up to Warnock and told him he considered him a good man. It stuck with the senator, Warnock saying, we've got to find a way to engage one another at the human level. There are places where we can work with people with whom we disagree without being disagreeable, and Joe Biden certainly knows how to do that. He often said he views his 2021 runoff victory, Warnock does, a day before the January 6, 2021 pro-Trump mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol, as an inflection point in American politics. We are still at that inflection point, Warnock says. That's really what's at stake. And I'm very proud that Morehouse is once again at the center of that important debate, as it will be this weekend. We'll include that article, all the ones we cited, the NPR pieces as well, as we always do, in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. What the hell happened in Congress last night? Speaking of people being disagreeable, we'll cover some of that when the Ron Show returns in minutes on America One Radio. All right, home stretch of the Ron Show. Thank you for listening on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com. Over the weekend at Progressive Voices on TuneIn, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com. Or if you listen via podcast, I appreciate that. So we haven't really discussed this yet, and I don't know, I've been sort of reticent to even bring it up, but there's this alarming number of folks in Congress showing up in New York to sit in the gallery at Donald Trump's hush money election interference trial, the one involving porn star Stormy Daniels. And who was it? Was it Hakeem Jeffries called them the Red Tie Brigade, right? Because they're all showing up wearing the Trump suit. You know, the royal blue jacket, the long red tie, and the white shirt. They're not a cult, but they're not a cult. Even House business in the House of Representatives had been held up because a gaggle of MAGA Republicans in the House chose instead to make their appearances seen and known in New York. And the inference being, Matt Gaetz saying as much, Lauren Boebert yesterday, that because there is a gag order on Donald Trump because he's threatened the judge's family and made allusions to the witnesses as well. Their premise being that they have to be there to speak up because he's been gagged. So much. This is so important to them, by the way. So important. This is where you see evidence that the GOP is lost. And come this election cycle, we have to just decide as the American citizen body that that's all we can lose. Like literally, we have to decide the GOP is lost. And maybe they can reclaim it within themselves, but in the process of losing the GOP, we cannot lose our ability to vote and elect sane, rational leaders. It sounds hyperbolic to say that democracy is on the ballot, but democracy is on the ballot, and it always has been. And we've been fighting to save democracy, or the promise of democracy, the premise of democracy, for a long time. That's why there's always the argument about gerrymandering, the Electoral College. We don't have enough conversation, in my mind anyway, outside of this show and a few other places, about uncapping the House. I think that is anti-democratic with a little d. But yeah, I mean, Congress, there are those in Congress who have been so busy bootlicking and shilling for the former president of the United States and the presumptive nominee of their party that they've been withholding business in Congress, including their feckless, lacking in testimony or evidence attempt to impeach Joe Biden. Jasmine Crockett speaking to the delays late last night.
I know a lot of people refer to the former president as president, but we have one president at a time, and that is Joe Biden. And seemingly, this type of attitude and position has come straight from the top. This idea of lacking all decorum, decency, has left the building when the stench of Donald Trump showed up. And so we've seen constantly from him how he mocks people. We've seen in this committee how different members want to mock other members. And that's all this is about. But what is so frustrating to me, and what should be frustrating to the American people, and the reason that really all y'all should lose y'all's jobs, but why we are going to take the majority is simple. It's because we showed up ready to work earlier today, like we always do. And now it is currently 10 p.m. and we are still here because we are committed to doing the right thing. And my question is really simple. It's a matter of, if this was such a big deal, if it was a matter of an emergency, if this was so important as it relates to whether or not the president of the United States has done something so wrong, then why is it that we couldn't have our hearing at 11 o'clock this morning instead of members being in a criminal courthouse with a twice impeached, over 88 count indicted sexual abuser, instead of being here to do the work of the American people if this was serious? This is the reason that people don't believe that we are doing serious
Mr. Chairman,
work
point of order.
here.
I'd ask state your point. My point of order is this. She just engaged in personalities about a former president, which
You can't engage in personalities with a former president.
Just
That is not the
reviewed the rules, and you know that is true. If you were on the floor, you would be admonished. You know that.
Not the rules.
The character digs, the personality digs that Jasmine Crockett's referring to. Well, here's how this played out. Marjorie Taylor Greene went after her eyelashes.
I'd like to know if any of the Democrats on this committee are employing Judge Merchan's daughter.
Please tell me what that has to do with Merrick Garland.
Is she a porn star?
Oh, Goldman. That's right. He's advising. Okay.
He's advising who? What? Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about AG.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr. Chairman,
That's beneath even
the order of your committee.
Order.
I do have a point of order, and I would like to move to take down Ms. Greene's words.
AOC.
That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?
Are your feelings hurt?
Her words down.
Aw.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't even play.
Baby girl? I don't think
we are going to
so.
move, and we're going to take your words down.
I second that motion.
So who will have to pay us? Okay. But Ms. Greene agrees to strike her words.
I believe she
Chair
needs to
recognizes
apologize. No. She
Perry.
needs to
Okay,
apologize.
hold on. Then after Mr. Perry, she'll be recognized. And Ms. Greene
I'm not
has 4 minutes and
apologizing.
21
Well,
seconds.
then,
Okay,
you're
reserve
not
the right to
striking your
object.
words.
I am
You're
not
retracting.
apologizing.
My God.
Come on, guys.
Well, this is what
Why
happens
don't
when you keep him up to
debate
11.
me?
Mr. Chairman, the minority.
pretty self-evident.
Chair you're not.
Yeah, you're
out
not.
of order.
You don't have enough
You're out of order.
intelligence.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perry.
This is what happens when you keep them up late, y'all.
To strike
I'd like to strike those words as
lady's
well.
Move to
I would
strike.
like
Strike the
order.
lady's words again.
That's 2 requests to strike. That's 2 requests to strike.
Oh, they cannot take the words.
There's another motion to strike her words again. Please
All right,
get
okay,
your members under
here's
control.
the correct parliamentary. Ms. Greene, do you agree to unanimous consent to strike your words?
I repeat again for the second time. Yes, I'll strike
All right.
my words,
That-
but I'm not
all right.
apologizing.
Without objection.
Not apologizing.
God.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Uh-oh.
Who's
It's me.
Ms. Crockett?
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
What now?
Oh, he's going to make her repeat it.
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold
a
on.
I'm
parliament.
trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike
I
those
had no idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just said
You just voted to do
Y'all did
it.
it first, so you don't want to talk about
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this
I
is
would
what
like to
y'all
get
do.
through proceedings.
So I'm trying to
Hey,
get
Ms.
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
Y'all wanna
recognized.
play
Ms.
games.
I can't hear you with your
And
yelling.
You don't want
Calm
me
down.
to be,
Can
no,
you please calm down?
Don't tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all
Please
talk
calm
noise,
down.
and then you
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if I
Look,
come,
Chairman,
if I
can
come
we
and
send
talk
out-
shit
take a
about
break
her,
for 5
y'all
minutes?
gonna have a
Mr.
problem.
Chairman, Mr.
And that was last night in our hallowed halls of Congress, the House Oversight Committee. Let's see, they want to impeach the president. They sought to impeach Mayorkas and failed. And now they want to admonish, get this, they want to admonish the Attorney General Merrick Garland for not releasing audio from a special counsel interview with the president because the president has exerted executive privilege. This is, of course, after we had 4 years of the exertion of executive privilege during, the Mueller investigation and the 2 impeachment hearings that were held for improper phone call with the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, and, of course, the post-January 6th impeachment hearing as well. But they want to hear audio and insist on audio and insist that executive privilege shouldn't be exerted by President Joe Biden just for not wanting an interview with a special counsel who, by the way, passed on extending any sort of charges over classified documents. You can't make this stuff up. And that's what we're here for. The Ron Show, done for the week. Back here Monday, 9 to 10 a.m. on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com. Show notes, RonShowATL.com. Have yourselves a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.